Ben Eisen is here with the Fraser Institute, and every year about this time, they come up with Tax Freedom Day. And it generally tends to be sometime around June 7th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So here we are. It is Tax Freedom Day officially today. And that information has just come out this morning. So tell me about what Tax Freedom Day is.
That's right. The information did just come out a few moments ago. We keep it a secret until the day of. What Tax Freedom Day is it's sort of a thought experiment. We all know that we pay a lot of taxes, but we don't see them all. We don't actually pay them all at once. We don't necessarily know how much over the course of the year, when you factor in payroll taxes, when you factor in sales taxes, fuel taxes, everything that we pay, how much is it actually? And so we do a thought experiment and say, okay, if you had to pay it all up front, your tax bill for the year, how long would it take you to finish paying your taxes so that you could then begin working for yourself? And that day is today. So going forward, the money you would earn, you would get to keep. Everything up until today goes to the government.
You guys have done this for decades.
We have.
And when was Tax Freedom Day decades ago?
It's been a big range over time because the tax burden on Canadians has gone up and down over time. At its latest, it was significantly later in June, towards the end of the month. At its earliest, it was in May. So it has moved. You mentioned that it's usually, the first week of June, second week of June. Yeah. That's in relatively recent years. Prior to that, there was a pretty big range as tax policies changed over time and as incomes have changed over time.
Okay, this week, though, something different. It's been the battle of the think tanks. We've had the Broadbent Institute, another think tank, started by Ed Broadbent, that says they feel Tax Freedom Day was back in March and that Canadians are under-taxed. What's the response to that? They say the calculations of the Fraser Institute doesn't take into account, or takes into account, too many things as taxes.
Well, there's a good news, bad news part to that for me. The good news is, first, whenever our motto as an organization is, if it matters, measure it. And we think measuring the tax burden on Canadians is extremely important. So if we inspire other organizations to try their hand at it as well, that's all to the good. Unfortunately, in this case, I think we're right, and I think that they're wrong. In particular, they leave out a whole bunch of taxes, which if you don't include, it's very hard to understand how it captures the full tax burden paid by Canadians. So, for example, they exclude all business taxes from their calculation. Well, of course Canadians pay business taxes. They pay it in the prices of the goods that they buy. If they own shares in companies, they're taxed on that. So what we're trying to do, and the whole point of our exercise, is measuring the total tax burden. How much comes out of your wallet each year and goes to the government. So if you include big categories of taxation, big categories of taxation that we don't directly see, you're sort of, in our view, defeating the purpose of the exercise.
Okay, I don't know if you can answer this or not, because you measure, but can you give an opinion? Is it good or bad that Tax Freedom Day is falling now? Is it too early, too late? Are we paying too much, too little?
Yeah, fantastic question, and unfortunately that isn't what we do in Tax Freedom Day. As I said, if it matters, measure it. We think that understanding quality of public services, that's why we measure different public services constantly. And we think that the burden, the size of the amount of tax Canadians pay is something that we need to know and we need to measure and we need to track over time. So that's what we do. We measure it, we tell people how much of their money goes to taxes, and then it's up to individual Canadians to determine, am I getting good value for money for the public services that I receive for this amount, about 43% of our income. But that's not a determination that we enter into in this project.
So there's some hidden taxes maybe that we should know about. Of course, tax time is past now, but what should we be watching for that's hidden?
Well, yeah, I think that it's being aware of just how much we do pay in taxes. We can sort of see on our paycheck, if we're paid regularly, we see the deduction for our income tax. We might have a bit keener sense of that, or payroll taxes, CPP, things like that. We might see that more visibly, but we don't know how much sales tax we pay over the course of an entire year unless we keep very good records. How much fuel tax, people who either drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes, how much they pay in taxes for that. So there's a fuel tax to run your car. So there's all kinds of taxes that we pay day in, day out, and what our work does is it helps measure it, average it, and say, okay, average Canadian, how much are you paying over the course of the year? And today you'd be free of it, and it would be Tax Freedom Day.
Well, enjoy it, my friends, because as of today you start working for yourself. They're still going to take taxes off in your paycheck from here on in, though that doesn't disappear.